Hi there, my name is Raj J. I am a nursing student at Charles R. Drew University, and today I will be presenting on drills and skills, improving nursing school simulations and skills. This will be a part of my evidence-based practice project, as well as transition to professional practice project as well. So what is the goal of this project? Well, essentially to increase both the engagement of not only just faculty, but also students with clinical and academic partners in the design of innovations that involve system change and practice-based technologies to essentially, in the end, improve patient care, workflow processes, and the environments that we are going to be working in as future nurses. Alrighty, so what is the significance of this problem? Well, currently there's a major issue with a lot of nursing programs, and that is the lack of experience with simulation and hands-on skills. So according to a study by Sheen in 2019, 44,000 to 98,000 Americans die each year due to preventable harm in the hospitals and clinics. And so drills and simulations can offer students and eventually patients a safe learning space where students can practice and practice in a wide range of scenarios without causing harm. So in this project, I want to pose the question of, would implementing a mock code or skills boot camp aimed at nursing students improve their clinical competencies and, in the end, increase patient survival outcomes and also student confidence in what they do? So just a quick note on the review of literature. For this project, I used databases such as PubMed, SynAHL, ProQuest, Ovid, and Medline. And I used keywords such as mock, simulations, drills, nursing school, nursing students, nursing school skills, nursing clinical competency skills to kind of find information related to the topic that I want to explore and implement. So for this project, I chose Lowen's change theory. And essentially, it's a three-step model that describes this behavior as essentially dynamic balance of forces. So step one involves this process of unfreezing. Step two involves the process of changing a certain perspective or way of looking at something. And then step three kind of finally confirms that new change and refreezes that desired behavior. One thing that I wanted to bring up that I think is important, not just for this project, but for education in general, is why are we learning this, right? What is the point? And I found this quote by Elon Musk, and I think it applies very appropriately to this situation. Simply listing the tools that you need to take an engine apart isn't enough to learn how to do it. You also need to try it yourself. By taking the engine apart and putting it back together, you learn about the wrenches and the screwdrivers and all the tools that you need. And as a result, you understand the relevance. And I think this applies to nursing school and the skills that we learn. We learn about IVs, different gauges, different catheters, maybe a Foley catheter, an indwelling cath, yet we lack the hands-on skills and experience to implement that in a real-world setting. So although there is a problem, I think there is a great opportunity for change. And why do I think so? Because I think it could better equip and allow students to come out of nursing school and nursing programs being more prepared than before and not having to rely on, maybe certain coworkers or hospitals to train them. And I think that's a very important thing to have, especially during an emergency or when a patient is deteriorating very rapidly. So throughout my search for literature, I found a couple of sources that I'm going to put in this slide. It doesn't have all of the resources, but these are the main ones. A study in 2013 by Kalalia was a descriptive quantitative study, and it essentially assessed simulations to lower the anxiety and increase self-confidence of the students taking it. It offered a sample population from the Philippines, and their interventions involved pre, during, and post questionnaires. In a 2016 study by Erbers, it was a case-controlled study which involved the in situ mock code to boost nursing confidence and performance. They'd measured things such as assessing, calling for help, CPR, and defibrillation times and response times. A study in 2021 by Odukato revealed the performance and satisfaction levels of online learning. It was taken place in Israel, and it used, again, surveys to assess internet use, mindset towards online learning, and stress levels, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic when students didn't have access to skill labs or even mock simulations. Everything was done online. And then finally, a study done in 2013 by Delac talked about improving response times and effectiveness to mock codes along with a video debrief. And this is important. This is one thing that I will bring up later about video debriefing. Again, the sample size was more than 250 nurses, and debriefs, post-surveys, and evaluations followed. So, identifying the problem. I came up with 3 bullet points kind of talking about what is going on. One being students are taught a lot of information in class and through textbooks, but something that really lacks in nursing programs is the hands-on skills that students need to be successful in nursing. I believe that theory is useless without practical skill. Knowledge is useless without power. Right? Another thing that I found was practice makes perfect. Right? The more and more you do something, the better and better you get at it. And analyzing identifies individual student gaps in understanding. You need to be able to know what you did wrong so you can improve on that. And finally, an individual approach trumps a blanket approach. It's much harder to be successful when you have to follow certain rules that don't really apply to you. An individual tailored approach is designed specifically for you to get better in your weak spots, and so you can improve that later. So some factors that I found that were attractive to fixing the problem were pre, during, and post surveys, where you assess stress, current knowledge, skill sets, and a whole big picture understanding of what's going on. Another thing is, again, video recording, seeing yourself perform the skill, and so you can identify where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. Debriefing. You can't go through a skill and then move on. You have to debrief and figure out what happened, what did you do well, and what didn't you do well. And finally, repetition. You can't finish a skill or a simulation and move on and forget about it. You have to repeat. Practice makes perfect. Detractive factors that I found for getting better at simulations and skills are the workload of schools and programs. There's a lot that we need to learn, and one solution is just 1-hour sessions. Very quick, something that can get done easily and not detract from the workload of the school. Another thing is a blanket simulation. Again, we have to create individualistic plans for students to get better individually. And then finally, there's no repetition in the status quo. So you got to keep repeating throughout the program and semester to prevent forgetting. So what is the recommended best practice? Well, currently, drills and simulations aided by video recording, debriefs, and surveys with a multidisciplinary approach is the best way to go about doing it. It's less expensive, doesn't cause patient harm, and you're able to practice competencies, teamwork, leadership, communication, all the things that are used in the real-world settings. It also provides a safe space where you can make mistakes and not having to worry about harming patients. Video recording allows you to have much more of a personal connection with the skill, and incorporating frequent and thoughtful multidisciplinary simulation-based team training, because in the end, you're not working alone, you're working with other people. So the plan of action is step 1, unfreeze. Survey students, run through a simulation, and verbalize throughout the whole simulation what is going on and your thoughts with the video recording. Step 2, change. Debrief what happened. Practice those individual skills. Discuss which was wrong and why. And then finally, step 3 is to refreeze. Have students create an individualistic action plan and repeat it constantly throughout the semester and program to allow for mind-muscle connection. For the plan of actions, I rank them in terms of importance. 1 being surveys. You got to assess prior to initiating any action where the student is at, in both stress level and competency level. Step 2, or the second approach, is video recording. It creates much more engagement and identifies gaps in knowledge. And step 3, or approach 3, is to create an action plan individually for students, because that will make them responsible for the outcome. So what is the status quo right now? Well, simulation labs are only taught once a week, 1 skill at a time, and then it's forgotten. Mock codes that we had at CDU were very few and far between, with no follow-up, no surveys, no ways to improve. So this slide uses the ADPI model to kind of implement what is going on, assess, right, gather data but through surveys and questionnaires on how competent students are, their stress levels, and current knowledge of the skills or simulation. Diagnose knowledge deficiency, and then plan out a mock emergency simulation with students. Implement these days, simulation days, at the beginning, middle, and end of the semester, and then evaluate the skills through testing and surveys, again at the beginning, middle, and end of the semesters, to see if there's any change in improvement or deterioration. So implementations further detailed are surveys and knowledge questionnaires. Create them for pre, during, and post simulations. 2 is inform and gather faculty, right? You want to involve both students and faculties. Schedule 1-hour sessions on class days or on off days. And then gather resources needed. Video camera, microphones, supplies relating to the scenario, so there's no pretend that the supply was there, and room reservations. And finally, create an action plan form for students. Questions such as strengths, weaknesses, and how do you plan to improve, with timelines and deadlines for checkpoints. So policy and protocol for this. What is the purpose? To improve clinical competency in the end, increase patient survival outcomes, and student confidence while reducing their stress levels. Surveys and knowledge questionnaires. Students will be required to fill out surveys and questionnaires prior, during, and post simulation. And finally, video recording. Students will be required to participate in video recordings and also will be required to verbalize out loud every action they take. This will be used and helpful in debriefing. Specifically regarding the action plan, students must complete and fill out an action plan for each said skill or simulation, and they should include things like 5 strengths, 5 weaknesses, and at least 3 check-in deadlines to see if you've improved on that skill and hold yourself accountable for it. For mock simulations, these skill days should be hosted 3 times a semester for all of the semesters in the nursing program. Faculty can guide the students, act as patients, or oversight on simulation days. And the CDU Healthcare Simulation Operations Specialist will be required to be on site for each simulation day, as well as be responsible for collecting data from the surveys and questionnaires. They will be collecting, tracking data, and organizing them into graphs, as well as collecting feedback sheets from students and faculty so that they could see trends and provide feedback. Finally, evaluation. How do we evaluate? Well, faculty like professors, clinical sim directors gather data so they understand where a class stands as a whole. Are there general gaps? Do people not understand this skill in particular? And then test individuals on these skills as a part of a core class like med-surg or advanced med-surg, OB, psych. Students are more motivated to do well when they're tested on it. And not only evaluate skill set, but the time. How fast are you at getting this skill? And it should show improvement over time. Finally, I just want to loop back to the engagement of faculty and students, right? Students have repeated chances to run the simulation to improve the mind-muscle connection. They verbalize each step, and they debrief and teach the instructor what they've learned. Faculty can serve as patients, work behind the scenes to help with the mock code or simulation, guide students to increase understanding and efficiency because they have years of experience, and collaborate with the simulations operations specialist at CDU. And finally, I just want to include a slide about the overall advantages of implementing a plan like this. It could lead to faster communication between not only just nurses, but other healthcare providers, other staff working in hospitals and clinics. It can increase the efficiency of the nurse. They don't have to worry about performing a skill, and they can focus on assessing the patient properly. It leads to improved care and increased patient outcomes, right? You want to do all of this to increase the patient outcomes in the end. That's what's the most important thing. And then finally, burnout prevention. You don't want to be bogged down coming out of school with learning how to do these certain skills because you're going to be learning a lot. So by implementing these mock codes and drills over a period of time and reassessing and evaluating, it could really strengthen their skills. And that concludes my project presentation. Thank you very much.